So we'll discuss our case, that is the consolidation of lung. So what is your diagnosis? The examiner will ask what is your diagnosis, then what will you say? Then you will say it is a case of consolidation. It is a case of consolidation of the lower lobe of left lung. So it is a consolidation of lower lobe or left lung, and it depends upon case to case. It might be middle lobe of right lung, or it could be upper lobe of left lung, but this case is a consolidation of the lower lobe of the left lung. Then examiner will ask why do you say so. This is a consolidation of left lobe, lower lobe of the left lung. Then why do you say so? Then you will say the patient is suffering from consolidation because there are symptoms of and there are signs. Then you elaborate the symptoms and signs. So what are the symptoms of consolidation? You will find the patient history will be there. There will be patient has fever with chills, with rigors, with chills, with rigors and malaise and headache from last 5 days. So patient will be having fevers with rigors, with chills, with malaise, with headache from last 5 days. Then he also may complain of pain on left side of the chest, pain on the left side of the chest, and dyspnea from last 3 days. So he is having the pain on the left side of the chest and dyspnea from last 3 days. Also there is a history of harassing dry cough from last 2 days. So what are the symptoms of our case? Patient has fever with chills, with rigors, with malaise, with headache from last 5 days. Then he's having chest pain on the left side and dyspnea from last 3 days. He also history of harassing dry cough from last 2 days. So these are the symptoms. Then the examiner will ask, okay, these are the symptoms, then what are the signs of consolidation in this patient? What are the signs you find? Then you will say in general survey, then you will say in inspection, in palpation, in percussion, and in auscultation. So inspection, palpation, percussion, auscultation, and general survey. So you will elaborate your finding, like you will say this is a consolidation. The patient is looks toxic, ill, conscious, and cooperative. The patient looks toxic, ill, conscious, cooperative, and decubitus is propped up at 45 degree. So patient is conscious, cooperative, toxic, and ill. Decubitus is 45 degree, propped up. Cyanosis is absent. Respiratory rate is 30 breaths per minute, regular and predominantly abdominothoracic. Pulse rate is 88 beats per minute, regular rhythm, and you will mention all the points in the pulse. Then you will say pulse to respiration ratio is 3:1. So pulse to respiration is 3:1. Then you will say herpes labialis present on the left side. If there is presence herpes labialis, then oral temperature is 100 degree Fahrenheit at present. Next stiffness is absent to diagnose meningism. Next stiffness is absent to diagnose meningism. So you will say, again I will repeat whatever you will say in the general survey. In the general survey you will say the patient is toxic, ill, conscious, cooperative, decubitus, cyanosis, respiratory rate, pulse respiration ratio, herpes labialis, temperature, neck stiffness. Then this was the general survey. Then inspectory finding, then we will say upper respiratory tract reveals no abnormality. Upper respiratory tract reveals no abnormality on inspection. Then absence of the intercostal suction, but accessory muscles of respiration are working. You are not finding the intercostal suction, but accessory muscles are working. Accessory muscles are working, but intercostal suction is absent, but accessory muscles are working. Then absence of fullness or flattening of the chest wall anywhere. There is no fullness or flattening of the chest. There is no fullness, no flattening. There is no fullness and no flattening anywhere on the chest. Apical impulse is below the left nipple, approximately 3-inch lateral to the midline. So it is below the left nipple, apical impulse. Then you will say there is diminished movement on left side of the chest, mainly the lower part of the back and the lateral aspect, lower part of the back and lateral aspect. So diminished movement on the left side of the chest. So what are the inspectory findings on the chest? Upper respiratory tract reveals no abnormality, absence of intercostal suction, but accessory muscles are working. There is no fullness or flattening. Apical impulse position, you will say decreased movement on left side on back and lateral aspect. This is the inspectory finding. Then what are the palpatory finding? Restricted movement on the left side of the chest. There will be restricted movement on the left side. Trachea and apex beat are normal in position. Trachea and apex beat are normal in position. No mediastinal shift. No mediastinal shift. Then vocal fermitus increased. Vocal fermitus increased on left side. Vocal fermitus increased. Vocal fermitus increased on left side, lower part of the lateral aspect and the back mainly. So vocal fermitus is increased. Friction fermitus is also present. Friction fermitus is also present in the back and the left side of the chest with local tenderness. So what are the findings on palpation? There is restricted movement on the left side of the chest. Restricted movement. Trachea and apex beat is in normal position. Trachea and apex beat is in normal position. No mediastinal shift. Vocal fermitus is increased on the left side. Friction fermitus present in the lower part of the back and on the left chest with local tenderness. So this was the palpation. Then on percussion you will find woody dullness on the left side. Woody dullness on left side. Woody dullness on left side. Mainly the back and the lateral aspect. Mainly the back and the lateral aspect. Outline on the woody dullness is irregular and limited. So woody dullness is present on the back and the lateral aspect. Now the auscultation. All the positive findings are present mainly on the left base, left infrascapular region, left base, left infrascapular region. All the positive findings are present. So on auscultation you will find the tubular breath sound, high pitched tubular breath sound, which is bronchial. High pitched tubular breath sound you are finding. You are finding the increased vocal resonance on auscultation. In palpation you are getting the vocal fermitus. In auscultation you are getting the vocal resonance. Increased vocal resonance, you will get bronchophony. Whispering pectoraloquy if you are getting, you will get egophony, pleural rub. Absence of rhonchi and crepitations as the lung is solidified and liquefaction is yet to start. So there is absence of rhonchi and crepitation as the lung is solidified and liquefaction is yet to start. So these are the finding on signs. Then the right lung seems to be normal clinically. You will say then after it, the right lung seems to be normal clinically. Characteristic rusty sputum may not be found. The surface marking of the dullness in consolidation and collapse follows the distribution of the affected lobe, which is not seen in pleural effusion. So the surface marking of dullness in consolidation follows the distribution of the surface marking of dullness in consolidation and collapse. Surface marking of dullness in consolidation and collapse follows the distribution of affected lobe, which is not seen in pleural effusion. The involvement of the lung in acute bronchopneumonia is usually patchy. So the involvement of the lung in acute bronchopneumonia is usually patchy, bilateral, and more widespread in the lower lobes. It is patchy, it is bilateral, and more widespread in the lower lobes. So the involvement of the lung in acute bronchopneumonia is usually patchy, and it is mostly bilateral, and it is mostly involving the lower lobes. Why do you say consolidation of the lower lobe? The examiner can ask question. Then you will say it is the consolidation of the lower lobe because the signs are predominantly Signs are predominantly seen in the back and at basal region. So findings are mostly at the back and the basal region, so it is a consolidation of the lower lobe. Then the examiner can ask what are the stages of pneumonia with auscultatory findings. So pathological stages of pneumonia with auscultatory findings. There are 4 stages. We have the stage of congestion, then we have the stage of red hepatization, then stage of gray hepatization, the stage of resolution. So these are the stages of pneumonia. We have the stage of congestion, stage of red hepatization, stage of gray hepatization, and stage of resolution. Stage of congestion lasts from 24 to 48 hours, that is 1 to 2 days. The stage of congestion 1 to 2 days. From 2 to 4 days we have the stage of red hepatization. From 4 to 8 days we have the stage of gray hepatization, and from more than 8 days, after 8 days you get the stage of resolution. So 1 to 2 days stage of congestion, 2 to 4 stage of red hepatization, then for 4 to 8 days stage of gray hepatization, then after 8 days we have the stage of resolution. So what happens in stage of congestion? In stage of congestion you will find there is index crepitations in stage of index crepitation in stage of congestion, while in stage of resolution you will get the redox crepitation. So index in congestion and redox in resolution. In index crepitation, then we have to say here the congestion, red hepatization, gray hepatization, and resolution. We have to say their auscultatory findings. So in red and gray hepatization you will find the tubular breath sound, that is the classical findings of the classical feature of consolidations will be there in red and gray hepatization, while in congestion you will find the diminished vesicular breath sound with fine crepitation, which are the index crepitation. So index crepitations are fine and redux crepitations are coarse. So you will find a decreased vesicular breath sound with fine crepitations in the stage of congestion, which is also the stage of hyperemia. In stage of resolution, breath sound is vesicular or rarely bronchiovesicular. The breath sound is vesicular or rarely bronchiovesicular. In type, in congestion you find the vesicular breath sound. In resolution you find the vesicular or bronchiovesicular breath sound, coarse crepitations, and along with coarse crepitation. So tubular breath sound you get in red and gray hepatization, fine crepitation in with decreased vesicular breath sound, while coarse crepitation in resolution and with the vesicular bronchiovesicular breath sound. Respiratory symptoms and signs in consolidation are often absent in elderly, alcoholic, immunocompromised, or neutropenic patients. So signs and symptoms of consolidation. Signs and symptoms are consolidation. You are not going to find if patient is elderly, patient is alcoholic, patient is immunocompromised, and patient is neutropenic. Elderly, alcoholic, immunocompromised, neutropenic, you won't find the signs and symptoms of consolidation usually if the patient is elderly, alcoholic, immunocompromised, or neutropenic. Then comes the important question: how will you classify pneumonia? Classification of pneumonia. Pneumonia or consolidation. Consolidation has a synonymous with pneumonitis. So pneumonia is defined as the acute inflammation or executive solidification of the lung parenchyma. So what is pneumonia? Pneumonia is acute inflammation or exudative solidification of lung parenchyma. So it is acute inflammation or exudative solidification of the lung parenchyma, that is your pneumonia. So there are various classification of pneumonia. First classification is the main classification, and it is on the basis of etiology. So it can be classified as primary pneumonia and secondary pneumonia on the basis of etiological classification. Primary pneumonia is usually caused by strep pneumonia, which is most common, strep pneumonia, then staph aureus, then H. influenza, Klebsiella pneumonia. And this primary pneumonia is usually seen in acquired in normal healthy individual. It is community acquired and it is seen in normal healthy individual. So primary pneumonia is usually caused by the strep pneumonia, most common, then staph aureus, H influenza, Klebsiella, then it is usually community acquired. And secondary pneumonia is occurs when the host defense is weak. Host defense is weak, then you will get the secondary pneumonias. Secondary pneumonias you will get in, what are the condition you will get secondary pneumonia? Acute bronchopneumonia is secondary pneumonia, acute lobular pneumonia is secondary pneumonia, or hypostatic pneumonia. Acute bronchopneumonia, acute lobular pneumonia, acute lobular pneumonia, or hypostatic pneumonia, these are secondary pneumonia. Then benign aspiration pneumonia is secondary pneumonia, benign aspiration pneumonia is secondary pneumonia. Then suppurative or necrotizing pneumonia, lung abscess, necrotizing pneumonia, which is usually caused by staph aureus and Klebsiella, is also secondary pneumonia, which is seen in the lung abscess. Staph aureus and Klebsiella pneumonia causes the necrotizing pneumonia. The examiner can ask what are the organism causing necrotizing pneumonia, then you have to say it is the staph aureus and Klebsiella pneumonia that causes your necrotizing or suppurative pneumonia. Then we have the hospital acquired secondary pneumonia, hospital acquired. Then we have the immunocompromised host pneumonia and immunocompromised host, for example Pneumocystis jirovecii in AIDS. Pneumocystis jirovecii in AIDS is causing the secondary pneumonia. So this was the main classification of pneumonia, primary and secondary. Primary was strep pneumonia, staph aureus, H influenza, Klebsiella, and usually community acquired primary. Secondary pneumonia is usually acute bronchopneumonia, benign aspiration pneumonia, necrotizing pneumonia. Hospital acquired pneumonia is secondary pneumonia, and in immunocompromised individual the secondary pneumonia we will get. Then lung abscess may be a part of primary pneumonia. Then empiricist classification. Empiricist classification of most commonly used classification is by the mode of acquiring. Empiricist classification mode of acquiring you can get from the community acquired, you can get from the hospital acquired, or pneumonia in immunocompromised host. Pneumonia in immunocompromised host. So community acquired pneumonia is usually strep pneumonia and H influenza. Strep pneumonia and H influenza. Hospital acquired is usually nosocomial and mainly aerobic, gram negative aerobic, or an anaerobic, and aerobic and anaerobic in hospital acquired. And immunocompromised you will get the Pneumocystis jirovecii in AIDS, and in Pseudomonas aeruginosa it get in immunocompromised host, Pneumocystis jirovecii and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Then anatomical classification of the pneumonia. Anatomical classification of the pneumonia, it is divided as the lobar pneumonia, lobar, or it can be lobar or lobular, lobar, segmental. So this is the anatomical lobar, lobular, segmental. Lobar pneumonia is the homogeneous consolidation of one or more lung. Homogeneous, it is homogeneous consolidation of one or more lung. That is the lobar pneumonia. Then lobular pneumonia is your bronchopneumonia if bilateral. If bilateral, it is bronchopneumonia, lobular pneumonia. Segmental pneumonia you see in benign aspiration pneumonia is segmental pneumonia. So this was the anatomical classification. Then again classification by the etiological classification. If the pneumonia is caused by infection, is the pneumonia caused by chemicals, is the pneumonia caused by physical agent, is the pneumonia is because of the hypersensitivity reaction. Pneumonia caused by infection could be bacterial, could be viral, could be rectitial, could be yeast, could be fungus, could be protozoal, for example Pneumocystis jirovecii. So bacterial, virus, rectitial, yeast, fungus, and protozoal like Pneumocystis jirovecii. Chemical agents can cause pneumonia, for example irritant gases, aspiration of the vomitus, kerosene oil produces lipoid pneumonia. Then physical agents can cause pneumonia, for example irradiation can cause pneumonia. Then hypersensitivity reactions can cause pneumonia, for example SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and Loeffler syndrome can cause pneumonia. So systemic lupus erythematosus, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, Loeffler syndrome can cause your hypersensitivity reaction and pneumonia. Then radiological classification of the pneumonia. This is important. Radiological classification of the pneumonia. Pneumonia which occurs by sight radiologically, if alveolar or air space is pneumonia, then it can be classified as alveolar or air space pneumonia. It is mainly the air space pneumonia, or alveolar pneumonia is mainly the pneumococcal pneumonia. It is mainly the pneumococcal pneumonia, and you will find the air bronchogram on chest x-ray. You will find the air bronchogram on the chest x-ray. So alveolar or air space pneumonia is pneumococcal pneumonia. You will get the air bronchogram on chest x-ray. Then bronchopneumonia. In bronchopneumonia, which is usually caused by H influenza, bronchopneumonia usually caused by H influenza, and you would find the collapse on chest x-ray. In bronchopneumonia, you will find the collapse on chest x-ray. And in interstitial pneumonia, you will have the viruses, mycoplasma. Viruses and mycoplasma causes the interstitial pneumonia. You will find the reticular or reticulonodular pattern in X-ray. You will the reticular nodular pattern in the X-ray. I repeat, if there is alveolar or the air space pneumonia, which is the most common, you will find the air bronchogram. You will find the atelectasis or collapse if there is bronchopneumonia, which is usually the H influenza causes it. Then in interstitial pneumonia, which is caused by viruses or mycoplasma, you will get the reticular or reticulonodular shadows on the X-ray. Then there is one more classification which is called the behaviorist classification, in which the pneumonia can be easy or difficult, which is non-resolving. Easy pneumonia, difficult, which is non-resolving. Nowadays, ventilator associated pneumonia with MDR and non-MDR pathogens pose a problem in multi-drug resistance. So ventilator associated pneumonia with multi-drug resistance or without multi-drug resistance, you have to know that. Then this is very important question. What are the characteristic features of viral pneumonia? Characteristic features of viral pneumonia. The common viruses responsible for causing the viral pneumonia are your influenzas, parainfluenzas, varicillas, measles, respiratory syncytial virus, coronavirus. So influenza, parainfluenza, coronavirus, varicella virus, measles, respiratory syncytial virus. These are the causes of viral pneumonia. Then in characteristic feature, you will get the constitutional symptoms in viral pneumonia, like you will get the anorexia, headache, myalgia, malaise, headache, anorexia, malaise are predominant. Fever and toxic symptoms. Fever and toxemia usually precedes the respiratory symptoms. First there is fever and toxemia, then you start having the respiratory symptoms. So this is your this is the constitutional features in you getting in the viral pneumonia. Then cough may be absent initially. Cough is absent initially in viral pneumonia. Cough is absent, and sputum is mucoid in nature. Cough is absent initially in viral pneumonia. Hemoptysis, pleuritic chest pain, and pleural effusion is rare. Hemoptysis, pleuritic chest pain, and pleural effusion is rare. You will get rarely pleural effusion, rarely pleuritic chest pain, rarely hemoptysis in viral pneumonia. Then in viral pneumonia, spleen may be palpable in the first week. If there is a viral pneumonia, you may get spleen in the first week. Tachypnea may be absent. You will may get spleen in viral pneumonia. Paucity of the physical signs in the chest may develop later and seldom gross. Whatever the physical signs are there, there is slowness or paucity of the physical signs is there, but it may develop later and seldom gross. Initially there you may not get any physical signs in the viral pneumonia, but later on you can get, and it is usually gross. WBC count in viral pneumonia is usually normal. In viral pneumonia, WBC count is normal. Chest X-ray usually does not correspond to the lobes or segment. X-ray of viral pneumonia does not correspond to the lobe or segment, which is typical of consolidation. Reticular or reticulonodular patterns is seen. Reticular nodular patterns are seen in viral pneumonia. Viral pneumonia is usually self-limiting. There may be failure of rapid resolution or response with antibiotics. So usually viral pneumonia are self-limiting, but there may be failure of rapid resolution or response with antibiotic may not be there. Then comes the question: absence of physical signs of consolidation in lobar pneumonia, is it possible? So you are getting a case of lobar pneumonia, which is typical pneumonia, and you are not getting the signs of consolidation. The examiner will ask, this is lobar pneumonia, is it possible that you may not get classical signs of consolidation in lobar pneumonia? Is it possible? Then you say, yes sir, it is possible. Then examiner asks, how the signs are not there if it is a lobar pneumonia? Then you will say, if that there is deep seated consolidation is very deep, we are not getting the typical signs. Deep seated consolidation, you may not get the typical signs. Then if there is associated pleural effusion or empyema thoracic, you may not get the classic signs of consolidation. Pleural effusion or pneumonia, empyema thoracic, deep seated consolidations, you don't get the classical signs of consolidation. Then when the bronchus is not patent, exudate fills the bronchus along with the alveoli, as seen in massive pneumonia caused by Klebsiella pneumonia, Frank-Liner's pneumonia, you may not get the classical signs. So if the bronchus is obstructed, bronchus is not patent, bronchus is filled, alveoli are filled with the exudates in the class pneumonia, then you may not get the classical signs. Sometimes in hypostatic pneumonia, in hypostatic pneumonia sometimes in hypostatic pneumonia, the classical signs of consolidations are lacking. The classical signs of consolidations are lacking. So what is hypostatic pneumonia? It is also the acute lobular pneumonia. We already discussed it, acute lobular pneumonia. So what are the condition? Examiners say you are not finding typical signs. Why you are not getting typical signs? This is the patient. You should get the consolidation. You should get the signs. You are not getting why? The examiner will ask. And if they may probably deep-seated consolidation. Probably there is pleural effusion, or probably there is an empyema thoracic developing, or there is bronchus is not patent, or if the bronchus is not patent, as the exudate fills the bronchus along the alveoli, as in a massive consolidation, you may not get the typical signs of consolidation. Then what is massive consolidation? This is also very important question. What is massive consolidation? So it is the consolidation of more than one lobe. Consolidation involving more than one lobe is your massive consolidation. So consolidation of more than one lobe is the massive consolidation. Then appearance of physical signs of consolidation. When does the physical signs appear of the consolidation? You will say it will appear as early as within 2 days the signs appear, and it will disappear in 2 weeks. Within 2 days it will appear, and it will disappear in 2 weeks. Then the examiner says how long the appearance of radicular signs appear and disappear. Opacity in the X-ray appears within 12 to 18 hours. It will appear in 12 to 18 hours, and it will disappear in 4 weeks. It is disappear in 4 weeks. So the opacity appears in 12 to 18 hours and disappears in 4 weeks and disappears in 4 weeks. Appears in 12 to 18 hours and disappear in 4 weeks and disappears in 4 weeks. It will appear in 12 to 18 hours and disappear in 4 weeks. So signs appear in 2 days, disappear in 2 weeks. Consolidation opacity appear in 12 to 18 hours and disappears in 4 weeks. Then examiner can ask how to suspect development of effusion with pneumonia. How to suspect the development of effusion with pneumonia? When do you suspect effusion has developed? Development of effusion with pneumonia. Effusion with pneumonia is known as synpneumonic pleural effusion. Development of effusion with pneumonia is known as the synpneumonic pleural effusion. When the effusion appears after the resolution of pneumonia, it is called as the post-pneumonic pleural effusion. So if effusion is appearing along with pneumonia, it is synpneumonic. If the effusion is appearing after the Pneumonia is the resolution of the pneumonia, that is called as the post pneumonic pleural effusion. It is called as post pneumonic pleural effusion. After the resolution of the pneumonia, it is called as the post pneumonic pleural effusion. Together they are known as parapneumonic effusion. Synpneumonic effusion and post-pneumonic effusion, synpneumonic effusion and post-pneumonic effusion are known as the parapneumonic effusions. Parapneumonic effusions. These terms are going to be obsolete nowadays. Parapneumonic effusions are absolute nowadays. So how do you suspect a fusion? There is persistence of the fever, there will be fever, persist fever, there will be stony dullness, that is the fusion has set in, stony dullness on precaution, shifting of the mediastinum shift to the, that makes the clinician suspicion about the development of pleural effusion. So if fever is persisting, and you are getting the stony dullness, previously it was woody dullness, now you are getting the stony dullness, and you are getting the mediastinal shift, probably the effusion has set in. So fever persistent, stony dullness appearing, shifting of the mediastinum appearing, that is effusion is setting in. Radiologically, there is obliteration of the costophrenic angle in the chest X-ray, further supports the diagnosis. These are simple exudative effusions. So on X-ray, costophrenic angle is blunting. Then in this way, do you saying that the patient has developed the effusion. So when do you say, the examiner says, say this patient developed effusion, then what will you say? You will say, sir, fever is not getting corrected. Patient having this stony dullness and developing stony dullness, and there is shifting of mediastinum. Then on the X-ray, costophrenic angle is blunting. So it is most probably the effusion is developing in this patient. Then the examiner can ask, what are the causes of delayed resolution of pneumonia? Causes of delayed resolution of pneumonia. Delayed resolution of pneumonia. Causes of delayed resolution of pneumonia. Delayed resolution means the physical signs that persist for 2 weeks and the radiological features persist for more than 4 weeks after the proper antimicrobial treatment. So the signs is persisting for more than 2 weeks and radiological features are persisting more than 4 weeks despite the antibiotic therapy, then it is called as the delayed resolution. If signs are for more than 2 weeks and radiological features are for more than 4 weeks, they are persisting, they are not changing, signs are not getting down, radiology features are not getting down for a period of 4 weeks and signs for a period of 2 weeks, it is called the delayed resolution. And you should know why this patient is not responding, why there is delayed resolution. The common causes of delayed resolution are inappropriate chemotherapy, bronchogenic carcinoma, aspiration of the foreign body, diabetes mellitus, or HIV, or immunocompromised state, pneumonia caused by virulent organism, for example, staph pneumonia. So the common causes of delayed resolution are the inappropriate antibiotic, bronchogenic carcinoma, foreign body aspiration of the foreign body, immunocompromised state like diabetes and HIV, and a pneumonia caused by virulent organism like staph pneumonia. That's why it is not resolving. So these are the reason for non-resolution of the delayed resolution of pneumonia. So inappropriate chemotherapy treatment, like incomplete treatment, patient has received incomplete treatment, or there is suboptimal dose, or the wrong choice of the antibiotics, or there is drug resistance, or there is irregular intake. So either the treatment is incomplete, or there is suboptimal dose, wrong choice of the antibiotics, drug resistance, and irregular intake of the drugs. These are the causes for inappropriate chemotherapy. Then bronchogenic carcinoma, then partial obstruction of the bronchus by the foreign body like dentures in the elderly, or bronchogenic carcinoma seen in the clinical practice. So if there is a bronchus get obstructed by the foreign body like dentures or bronchogenic carcinoma, you will get delayed resolution. and sometimes complicated by the pleural effusion, suppurative pneumonia, empyema-thoracis. So if there is pleural effusion, empyema-thoracis, there is again delayed resolution. It is complicated by suppurative pneumonia, pleural effusion, lung abscess, empyema-thoracis. So delayed resolution. Decreased host resistance like diabetes, chronic alcoholism, lymphoma, leukemia, multiple myeloma, steroid therapy, hypogammaglobulinemia, AIDS, elderly, debilitated patient. In all these patients, that is the immunocompromised state. I will repeat what are the immunocompromised state. Immunocompromised state like diabetes, chronic alcoholic, lymphoma, leukemia, multiple myeloma, steroid therapy, hypogammaglobulinemia, AIDS, elderly, and debilitated patient. These are the immunocompromised state where the pneumonia takes time to resolute. Then tuberculous pneumonia needs specific ATT therapy. If it is tubercular, then it needs anti-TB drugs, so it is not responding. So this is also the cause. TB pneumonia is also the cause for delayed resolution. Then fungal or atypical pneumonia. Fungal or atypical pneumonia also takes time to resolute. Pneumonia resulting from the connective tissue diseases, for example SLE, or pneumonia from the pulmonary infarction, they don't resolute easily. Then recurrent aspiration, if someone having recurrent aspiration as in achalasia cardia or gastroesophageal reflux disease, achalasia cardia, gastroesophageal reflux disease, it does not resolute. Then if there is alternate diagnosis, for example pulmonary hemorrhage or pulmonary thromboembolism, that also causes delayed resolution. So what are the, I will repeat the delayed causes. Delayed causes, common causes are the inappropriate chemotherapy, bronchogenic carcinoma, aspiration of the foreign body, immunocompromised state like diabetes, HIV, AIDS, and pneumonia caused by virulent organism. So despite this, inappropriate chemotherapy could be due to incomplete treatment, suboptimal dose, wrong choice of the antibiotics, drug resistance, irregular intake of the drugs. Then if effusion is complicated by the pleural effusion, empyema-thoracis, or suppurative pneumonia, there is delayed resolution. Then decreased host response like diabetes, chronic alcoholic, lymphoma, leukemia, multiple myeloma, steroid therapy, hypogammaglobulinemia, AIDS, elderly, debilitated patient. In all those immunocompromised state, you are not going to get the resolution so easily. And tuberculous pneumonia needs the specific ATT therapy. Then partial obstruction of the bronchus by the foreign body or the bronchogenic carcinoma. Then fungal or atypical pneumonias, the pneumonia resulting from the connective tissue disease like SLE, and pneumonia from pulmonary infection. And if there is a recurrent aspiration in achalasia cardia or gastroesophageal reflux disease, then pneumonia and pulmonary hemorrhage, pulmonary thromboembolism, they are delayed to resolute. Then another important question, what are the possible causes of recurrent pneumonia? You're getting recurrent pneumonia. What are the possible causes of recurrent pneumonia? So recurrent pneumonia, the causes are, you will say all the immunocompromised cell, like recurrent pneumonia occurs in diabetes, in AIDS, in bronchogenic carcinoma. You will get the recurrent pneumonia in bronchogenic carcinoma. In diabetes and AIDS, in bronchogenic carcinoma, you will get the recurrent. And if there is foreign body aspiration, you will get the recurrent pneumonia. Then chronic bronchitis, SLE, multiple myeloma, achalasia cardia, cystic fibrosis, scleroderma, and ciliary dyskinesia. So main causes of recurrent pneumonia are the bronchogenic carcinoma, chronic bronchitis, foreign body aspiration, diabetes mellitus, HIV/AIDS, SLE, multiple myeloma, then achalasia cardia, cystic fibrosis, scleroderma, ciliary dyskinesias. These are the causes of recurrent pneumonia. Is it possible? Another question examiner can ask. Is it possible to have shifting to the same side of pneumonia? The trachea will shift. For example, this is trachea. Trachea will shift to the side of pneumonia. Normally, in pneumonia, trachea remains in central. Is it possible to trachea to shift to the same side of consolidation? Then what will you say? You will say In pneumonia, trachea remains in the midline. Rarely there may be same side shift of the trachea if there is a massive pneumonia. If there is massive pneumonia causing the collapse consolidation, If there is massive pneumonia causing the collapse consolidation, maybe from bronchogenic carcinoma. Yes, it is possible if there is collapse consolidation is there from bronchogenic carcinoma. Collapse consolidation can be there, then there is possibility that it will shift to the same side. Collapse consolidation. Then what are the predisposing factors for pneumonia? What are the risk factors for pneumonia or predisposing factors? First is cigarette smoking. Independent risk factor, strongest risk factor, cigarette smoking. Then upper respiratory tract viral infection followed by strep pneumonia infection. Then excess of alcohol intake, immunosuppression like diabetes, HIV AIDS, steroid therapy. These are the predisposing factors. Then IV drug abuser. Then bronchial obstruction by malignancy, bronchiectasis, aspiration from esophageal obstruction. Then old age, then severe liver disease, severe kidney disease, severe lung disease. So chronic lung, chronic liver, chronic kidney disease, all these are the predisposing factors. Alcohol, smoking, chronic kidney, chronic liver, chronic lung disease. Then upper respiratory tract infections, then immunocompromised state like diabetes, HIV AIDS, then HIV AIDS, then steroid therapy, then IV drug abusers, the bronchial obstruction, then from malignancy, the bronchiectasis, then aspiration from the esophageal obstruction. All these are the causes or the predisposing factors for pneumonia. So another question examiner can ask, when will you advise hospitalization in a patient of pneumonia? Then you will mutter the curve 65, means BP systolic less than 90 and diastolic less than 60, respiratory rate more than 30 breaths per minute, then age is more than 65, curve 65, age is more than 65, and C is confusion, and U is uremia. So if it is curve 65 score, you will do the curve 65 score. If it is more, then you will admit the patient. So respiratory rate, the patient will have severe dyspnea with, so hospitalization is advised in elderly patient. It is advised if it is more than 65 year, then patients with severe dyspnea, with hypoxia, with respiratory rate more than 30, with central cyanosis, with BP we already mentioned. Then if there is empyema, meningitis, you will admit. Altered mental status or delirium, you will admit. In shock, you will admit. Underlying serious cardiopulmonary disease, diabetes mellitus, uremia, cardiopulmonary disease, diabetes, uremia, you will admit. Then if there is hypoxia, PaO2 less than 60, you will admit. Leukopenia, that is the TLC less than 4000 per millimeter of cube, you will admit. Then or leukocytosis if TLC is more than 20,000. For example, in empyema, you will admit. If there is a high blood urea or culture positive pneumonia, you will admit. High blood urea or culture positive pneumonia, you will admit. The patient is referred to the intensive therapeutic unit. In severe acidosis, patient is referred to the intensive therapeutic unit in a cases of altered mental session, delirium, shock, underlying serious cardiopulmonary disease, diabetic uremia. And if there is hypoxia, leukopenia, leukocytosis, it should be received in intensive therapeutic unit and in severe acidosis. So these are the criteria for admission. You will see patient is elderly, dyspneic, central cyanosis, BP is falling, signs of meningism, meningitis, altered mentations, shock, cardiopulmonary disease, diabetic, uremia, hypoxemia, leukopenia, leukocytosis. These patients require admission. Then what are the accessory muscles? Examiner can ask another question. What are the accessory muscles of respiration? Then what you will say? You will say normal muscles of respirations are two. These are the intercostals. Normal muscles of respiration are intercostal. It could be external or internal intercostal muscles, and the diaphragm. These are the normal muscles of respiration, intercostal and diaphragm. Intercostal and diaphragm. Accessory muscles are not required for respiration in healthy. They are required to assist breathing in respiratory embarrassment, for example, in acute severe asthma and COPD, and may therefore be active and prominent. So, accessory muscles are used only when there is requirement to assist breathing in respiratory failure or embarrassment. It is not used in health accessory muscles. So, the normal muscles are two, diaphragm and intercostals, which are external and internal, and accessory muscles. I will now enumerate the accessory muscles. Accessory muscle first is the ali nasai, nasal flare, ala nasai. Then we have the sternomastoid. Then we have the sternomastoid, latissimus dorsi, trapezius, pectoralis major, serratus anterior, and abdominal muscles. So what are the accessory muscles? We have the ali nasai, sternomastoid, scalenidi, latissimus dorsi, we have the trapezius, pectoralis major, serratus anterior, and abdominal muscles. So I repeat: Alinezi, sternomastoid, sacculani, latissimus dorsi, trapezius, pectoralis major. Then this is serratus anterior. So in as with 3, we have the sternomastoid, scaleni, and serratus anterior. And with A, we have the two ali and abdominal muscles. Then another two are the latissimus dorsi and trapezius. These are the muscles, accessory muscles of respiration. Then the examiner can ask, what are the common causes of intercostal suction? What are the common causes of intercostal suction? Then what will you say? Normally, intercostal spaces extends and draws out in inspiration. So what happens during inspiration? As you are taking the breath in, it will expand and draws out in inspiration. Intercostal spaces normally expands and draws out. Intercostal spaces normally expands and draws out on inspiration. Intercostal spaces are expands and draws out. Intercostal suction is the drawing in of the intercostal spaces with inspiration, prognostically worse, and is commonly seen in the following condition. So what is intercostal suction? Normally with inspiration, the intercostal spaces bulge outward, it draws outward, it will expand. However, with inspiration, if the intercostal muscles are going inside the chest, this is called as the intercostal suction, drawing in of the intercostal spaces with inspiration. Drawing in, the word used is drawing in, drawing in, drawing in of the intercostal spaces with inspiration is intercostal suction, and it is seen in the, I will enumerate the condition. Where do you get the intercostal suction? First is the foreign body within the larynx, foreign body in larynx or trachea, you get the intercostal suction. Then if there is diphtheria, you will get the intercostal suction. Then if there is edema of the glottis, for example in anaphylaxis, you will get the intercostal suction. In COPD, you will get the intercostal suction. In bronchiolitis, in infants and children, bronchiolitis, you get the intercostal suction. And in bilateral diaphragmatic palsy, Out of these, important one is the foreign body and bilateral diaphragmatic palsy. You get the intercostal suction. And if you want to add on, you can add on anaphylaxis where there is edema of the glottis, COPD, bronchiolitis. So there is intercostal suction. Remember, bilateral diaphragmatic palsy, you will get the intercostal suction, and foreign body in the larynx and the trachea, you will get the intercostal suction. Despite this, you can add bronchiolitis, COPD, and anaphylaxis where there is edema of the glottis. Then, how does the intercostal suction produce? It is produced as a result of positive atmospheric pressures pressing the lower intercostal space in the face of negative intrathoracic pressure due to failure of air entry in the respiratory tract. So intercostal suction is produced as a result of positive atmospheric pressure, which is pressing the lower intercostal space in the face of negative intrathoracic pressure due to failure of air entry in the respiratory tract. So how does the intercostal suction is produced? Because there is negative intrathoracic pressure, which is because of the failure of air entry. There is negative intrathoracic pressure because of failure entry, and there is positive atmospheric pressure that presses on the lower intercostal space. So there is more negative intrathoracic pressure because of the failure of the air entry, and more positive atmospheric pressure because of the that presses the lower intercostal space, and that causes the intercostal suction. Now comes the very important question: what are the differential diagnoses of our case? So this was the consolidation. What are differential diagnoses? First differential is the pleural effusion. So what will you find in pleural effusion? Pleural effusion usually have gradual onset. And usually the cough may be dry. Patient may not be toxic. Dry cough, gradual onset. Patient is not toxic in pleural effusion. Dry cough and gradual onset. Remember, gradual onset in pleural effusion, dry cough. And mediastinal stiffness to the opposite side, mediastinal shift to the opposite side, and stony dullness on percussion. Mediastinal shift to the opposite side and stony dullness on percussion. Diminished vesicular breath sound or absent breath sound. Diminished vesicular breath sound or absent breath sound with diminished or absent vocal resonance. Usually there is no added sound in pleural effusion. You do not get added sound in pleural effusion. There will be breath sound will be reduced or absent, and also the vocal resonance. So breath sounds and vocal resonance will be either diminished or absent. Vocal resonance and breath sounds. This was the first differential. Then comes another differential, that is the collapse. What happens in collapse? If there is a collapse, the cause is detected from the history. There is usually aspiration, or there is a post-operative case, or there is trauma. Aspiration, post-operative event, or there is trauma. So you get the collapse. Patient does not look toxic, as in pleural effusion. Patient is non-toxic. Mediastinal shift is towards the affected side. There will be flattening of the chest and aggregation of the ribs. Impaired resonance on percussion. So if there is a collapse, the patient usually has the history. Important, write down somewhere. Important is the history. History will be there. Patient is not toxic. Patient has the history, not toxic. Mediastinal shift towards the lesion, towards the site of collapse, and there is flattening of the chest and aggregation of the ribs. Impaired resonance on percussion. This is collapse. Is another differential for your pneumonia. Then bronchogenic carcinoma in another differential. If there is bronchogenic carcinoma, then age is higher. Patient will be male. Patient will be smoker. Male smoker, more age, with clubbing. with cervical lymphadenopathy, with emaciation, with clubbing, with cervical lymphadenopathy, with emaciation. Usually no mediastinal shift. Usually no mediastinal shift unless complicated by pleural effusion. Usually there is no mediastinal shift unless there is pleural effusion. Localized crepitations over the mass. Localized crepitation over the mass. So what are the findings if there is bronchogenic carcinoma? Usually you will get the history of old age with male, with smoker, with clubbing of the hands, with cervical lymph nodes, with emaciation. Usually there is no midline shift in in bronchogenic carcinoma unless there is setting of the pleural effusion, and localized crepitation you will get over the mass in bronchogenic carcinoma. Then if there is pulmonary tuberculosis, then what will you say if there is pulmonary tuberculosis? If there is pulmonary tuberculosis, then there will be gradual onset of weight loss, there will be weight loss, there will be anorexia, weight loss, evening rise of temperature, and night sweats. Weight loss, anorexia, evening rise of temperature with night sweats, weight loss, anorexia. Physical signs are present mainly in the apical region in tuberculosis. Mainly apical regions are affected in tuberculosis. Absence of high temperature with rigor. There is absence of high rise of temperature is not so high with rigor. There will be longer history than pneumonia. Classical signs of consolidation are absent in tuberculosis. So if you are suspecting pulmonary tuberculosis, there will be weight loss, there will be anorexia, there will be evening rise of temperature, more long history, apical zones are affected, absence of high rise of temperature, longer history. Classical signs of consolidations are absent. This is pulmonary tuberculosis. Then if you are suspecting the pulmonary infarction or thromboembolism, then what will be the history? There will be sudden onset of chest pain in pulmonary embolism, pulmonary infarction, sudden onset of chest pain with dyspnea, Pyrexia is less, fever is less in pulmonary infarction. There may be evidence of thrombophlebitis in the leg. Cough is not troublesome. In pulmonary infarction. Cough is not troublesome. Patient is not toxic. In pulmonary infarction. Hemoptysis is much more common. So the key finding in this is if there is a thromboembolism, you will get the thrombophlebitis in the leg. I will write it with yellow. You will get the thrombophlebitis in the leg. You will get the hemoptysis, and you will get the chest pain with the dyspnea. These are the key features if there is thromboembolism. Chest pain with dyspnea, with the thrombophlebitis in the leg, with hemoptysis. So this is pulmonary thromboembolism. Then another question comes: what are the causes of hemoptysis? So what are the causes of hemoptysis? What will you say? There will be pulmonary causes, then there could be cardiovascular causes, then there could be coagulation disorder, and there is miscellaneous causes. So what are the uh, pulmonary causes for hemoptysis? Then you will say acute and chronic bronchitis, then you will say tuberculosis, pulmonary tuberculosis, then you will say bronchiectasis, then you will say lung abscess, bronchogenic carcinoma, so, and pneumonia. So what are the causes of hemoptysis? The pulmonary causes are acute and chronic bronchitis, tuberculosis, bronchiectasis, lung abscess, bronchogenic carcinoma, pneumonia, pulmonary thromboembolism, recently discussed pulmonary thromboembolism, lupus pneumonitis, which is from SLE. What is lupus pneumonitis? It is from SLE. It can cause hemoptysis. And foreign body in the bronchus. Foreign body is not so important. Remember, acute and chronic bronchitis are the commonest cause, then tuberculosis, bronchiectasis, lung abscess, bronchogenic carcinoma, pneumonia, pulmonary thromboembolism, Lupus pneumonitis from SLE. This was the pulmonary causes. Then cardiovascular causes for hemoptysis, the mitral stenosis, severe mitral stenosis, then acute left ventricular failure, acute LVF, mitral stenosis. Then primary pulmonary hypertension can cause hemoptysis. Primary pulmonary hypertension can cause hemoptysis, and Eisenmenger syndrome. Eisenmenger syndrome can cause hemoptysis. Then in the coagulation disorder, we have the hemorrhagic diathesis. For example, in leukemias, you get the hemoptysis leukemias, hemophilias, leukemias, hemophilias, and anticoagulant therapy. Anticoagulant therapy, leukemias, hemophilias, hemorrhagic. These are the hemorrhagic disorders like leukemia, hemophilia. Then, then in coagulation, if the patient is on anticoagulant therapy. Then miscellaneous causes you can remember as vasculitis, vaginous granulomatosis in the vasculitis. Then you can remember as aspergilloma, fungus wall, aspergilloma, vasculitis, good pasture syndrome. Then pulmonary hemosiderosis, hereditary disease are the other causes. Trauma, AV malformation. So the causes, miscellaneous causes are vasculitis, aspergillosis are the fungus wall. Remember as VAG. Good pasture, aspergilloma, vasculitis are the other causes of hemoptysis. So the common causes of hemoptysis are your bronchitis, pulmonary tuberculosis, bronchiectasis, bronchogenic carcinoma, pneumonia, mitral stenosis. Worldwide, chronic bronchitis is possibly the commonest cause of hemoptysis. Recurrent hemoptysis commonly due to what are the causes of? Now the question comes, what are the causes of recurrent hemoptysis? Then you will say chronic bronchitis, bronchiectasis, bronchogenic carcinoma, and pulmonary thromboembolism. Some sources other than lower respiratory tract like nasopharyngeal bleeding, laryngeal carcinoma may be a cause of hemoptysis. Nasopharyngeal bleeding. So what are the causes of recurrent hemoptysis? What is chronic bronchitis, bronchiectasis, bronchogenic carcinoma, pulmonary thromboembolism. Chronic bronchitis, bronchiectasis, bronchogenic carcinoma, pulmonary thromboembolism. These are the causes recurrent hemoptysis. Yeah, other than respiratory tract, what are the causes of recurrent bronchitis, hemoptysis? Then what will you say? You will say nasopharyngeal bleed, laryngeal carcinoma. They may be the cause of hemoptysis. What is pseudohemoptysis? Bleeding from the upper respiratory tract or oral cavity is pseudohemoptysis. What is pseudohemoptysis? Bleeding from the upper respiratory tract or oral cavity. Upper respiratory tract or oral cavity is pseudohemoptysis. Bleeding from the upper respiratory tract or the oral cavity is pseudohemoptysis. Then what is the massive hemoptysis? Another question is, what is massive hemoptysis? Massive hemoptysis, coughing out of the blood in excess of coughing out of the blood in excess of 200 ml per day. 200 ml per day is massive one. Coughing out of blood more than 200 ml per day is massive one and potentially lethal due to combined effect of blood loss as well as asphyxia. So it is lethal because there is blood loss as well as asphyxia. Blood loss can lead to the hemodynamic compromise. So coughing out of blood of more than 200 ml per day is lethal. It can lead to blood loss and asphyxia. Now another very important question, the examiner loves to ask this question, what is the difference between hemoptysis and hematemesis and hemoptysis? What are their differences? Then you have to say their differences. So hemoptysis is coughing out of the blood. While hematemesis is vomit out of the blood. Vomiting out of the blood is your hematemesis. Coughing out of the blood is hemoptysis. Vomiting out of the blood is your hematemesis. In hemoptysis, there is the symptoms of pulmonary and cardiovascular disease. Symptoms will be there. while symptoms of upper respiratory tract, upper GI tract will be there. In hemoptysis, upper GI tract will be there. Blood will be mixed with sputum. Blood will be mixed with sputum in hemoptysis, while blood is mixed with the fluid particle in hematemesis. Then blood is bright red in color and frothy from the admixture of air. It is bright red and frothy because of the admixture of air. It is bright red and frothy in hemoptysis, while it may be coffee ground in color if there is GI. If it is hematemesis, it is coffee ground in color. Here it is bright red, here it is coffee ground. Here is mixed with sputum, here is mixed with food particle. Here is the cause from the lung and the cardiac region. Here is the symptoms of upper GIT tract. Then other differences like premonitory symptoms will be there, like there will be cough, tickling sensation in the throat. There will be cough, tickling sensation in the throat. Premonitory symptoms will be there in your hemoptysis, cough and tickling sensation in the mouth, salty sensation or tickling sensation in the mouth. While there will be premonitory symptoms in a case of hemoptysis will be nausea, vomiting. There is nausea, vomiting, retching, nausea, vomiting, retching, fainting, abdominal discomfort, perspiration, abdominal discomfort, nausea, vomiting, retching, abdominal discomfort will be there in a case of hematemesis. Then melena does not occur in a case of hemoptysis. Rarely it can occur if someone has ingest the blood hemoptysis. Usually melena does not occur in hemoptysis. If melena is followed, it is your hematemesis. Melena occurs in hematemesis while it is not occur in hemoptysis. Then amount is usually less in hemoptysis. Shock is very rare. Amount is less, shock is rare. While if it is hematemesis, it is huge in amount, patient may be in shock. It is huge, very high amount, patient may be in shock in hematemesis. Then taste will be saline taste. If it is hemoptysis, it is bitter taste. In hematemesis is bitter taste. Saline taste is hemoptysis. Bitter taste is your hematemesis. Then reaction is alkaline. If it is hemoptysis, alkaline hemoptysis, blue litmus remains unchanged. Blue litmus remains unchanged. pH normal like blood. pH normal like blood. Here the taste was bitter and here the reaction is acidic. Blue litmus turns red. Blue litmus turns red. pH is acidic here. Blue litmus turns red. pH acidic here in hematemesis. Then what are the special signs in cavity within the lungs? What are the special signs of cavity in lungs? If someone has cavity in the lungs, what are the special signs? Pulmonary cavity is an area of liquefactive necrosis within the lung, may remain empty or filled with secretion and is usually communicating with a patent bronchus. The signs of cavity are pulmonary. What is pulmonary cavity? Pulmonary cavity is an area of liquefactive necrosis within the lung. Area of necrosis within the lung. Area of liquefactive necrosis within the lung is your pulmonary cavity, which may be empty. This cavity may be empty or may be filled with secretions and is usually having the communicating bronchus. The signs of this pulmonary cavity are the post-tissue crepitations, post-tussive suction, and cracked pot sound. And cavity. You will get the cracked pot sound on percussion. So, what are the features of cavity? There is post-tussive crepitations, post-tussive suctions, and crack pot sound on percussion. What is post-tussive crepitation? The crepitations which are evoked by coughing is your post-tussive crepitations. Crepitations evoked by coughing is your post-tussive crepitations. Crepitations evoked by coughing is your post-tussive crepitations. What is post-tussive suction? This is the high-pitched sucking sound. This is the high-pitched sucking sound. High-pitched sucking sound Audible during the phase of long inspiration following a bout of cough. It is heard during the phase of inspiration after the bout of long cough. The phase of inspiration is there. It is the high pitched sucking sound which is audible during inspiration following the cough. Hallmark sign of thin walled superficial compressible cavity with a patent bronchus. Post-acid suction is a feature of superficial cavity with the patent bronchus. Thin walled superficial cavity with the patent bronchus, where we are getting the cavernous sign, cavernous breath sound. We get the post-acid suction. During the inspiration, we will get after a bout of cough, there is a high-pitched sucking sound. Cracked pound sound, it is by percussion over a tympanic or empty cavity which mimics the sound produced by the percussion over a cracked pot. Cracked pot. So if you are percussing over an empty tympanic cavity or an empty cavity, percussing over an empty communicating cavity, it is a sound which is produced by percussion over an empty communicating cavity, mimics the sound produced by the percussion over a cracked pot. So what are the features of cavity? Post-tussive suction, post-tussive crepitations, cracked parts, resonance on percussion. So these are the signs of cavity within the lung. Then what are the findings over a superficial big empty cavity with patent bronchus? The examiner can ask, you get the superficial big empty cavity and it has the patent bronchus. You have the superficial very big cavity, empty cavity, and it has the patent bronchus. So what are the findings on this? Then you would say there will be slight, if there is a cavity, if someone patient, suppose this is a patient, these are the lungs, if this patient has a cavity here, then you will see there will be a slight reduction in the chest movement, reduction in the chest movement on the affected side if he is in the cavity. Absence of mediastinal displacement, mediastinal will not displace. increased vocal Increased vocal fermitus, here vocal fermitus will increase. Percussion on this cavity will reveal the hyperresonant and tympanic node when filled with air, impaired node when filled with exudate. So if it is air, you will get the tympanic node. If filled with fluid, no, if filled with exudate, you will get the impaired node, and if it is air, you will get the tympanic node. So on the affected side of the cavity, restricted movement you will find. On percussion, you will find the tympanic or impaired node. Mediastinum will remain in midline. Increased vocal fermitus, which you forget, there will be increased vocal fermitus. You will get either the tympanic node if there is air, you will get the impaired node if there is fluid. Then cavernous breath sound, which is low pitched breath sound with bronchophony and whispering pectoraloquy. So this is the empty cavity, superficial cavity, patent bronchus. You will get the cavernous breath sound. You will get the whispering pectoraloquy. Cavernous is the low pitched bronchial breath sound. Cavernous is low pitched bronchial breath sound. Low pitched bronchial breath sound. Cavernous is low pitched bronchial breath sound. You will get the cavernous breath sound. You will get the decreased movement, increased vocal fermitus, mediastinum in normal in position. With cavernous sound, you will get the whispering pectoraloquy and bronchophony. Empty superficial cavity with communicating bronchus, whispering pectorally, bronchophony. All these things you will get. And coarse crepitation, and you will get the chorus crepitations if there is an empty superficial cavity with exudate, and there may be post-tussive crepitations, which is coarse post-tussive crepitations. Physical signs are absent in deep separated cavity. This is already discussed. Then examiner can ask the question, what are the common causes of pulmonary cavity? Then what will you say? Common causes of cavity. What are the common causes of cavity? Then you will say we have the pulmonary tuberculosis. Commonest. We get the cavity there. लंग abscess में cavity मिलता है. लंग abscess TB. Then cavitating lung cancer. Then necrotic degeneration of the bronchogenic carcinoma, that is the cavitating lung cancer. Then bronchiectasis, you get the cavity bronchiectasis. Then pseudocavity you will get in large emphysematous bulla, large emphysematous bulla or lung cyst. This is pseudocavity. Where do you get pseudocavity? Lung cyst or large emphysematous bulla or lung cyst, you get the pseudocavity. These two conditions. Remember, the examiner can ask this question, so I will write it down. Where do you get pseudocavity? You will say lung cyst and large emphysematous bulla. Lung cyst and large emphysematous bulla, you get the pseudocavity. So it is thin walled also. Pseudocavity, lung cyst and emphysematous bulla large. Then other causes very thick wall, I think. This Wegener's granulomatosis, you get the cavity. Rheumatoid arthritis, you get the cavity. Pulmonary infarction, you get the cavity. Fungal cavity is also there. Wegener's, rheumatoid, pulmonary infarction, fungal cavity. So these are the causes of pulmonary cavity. Pseudocavity is large emphysematous bulla and lung cyst. You get the pseudocavity, large emphysematous bulla and lung cyst. Then comes the question vocal resonance and its classification. Vocal resonance and its classification. What is vocal resonance? Vocal resonance are the voice sounds. This is the auscultation of the laryngeal vibration transmitted to the chest wall and nothing but the auscultatory homologue of vocal fermitus. The resonance in the chest of the sounds made by the resonance in the chest of the sounds made by the voice. So it is the auscultation of the auscultatory vibrations, auscultation of the laryngeal vibrations which are transmitted to the chest wall. So you are auscultating the laryngeal vibration to the chest wall. Auscultating the laryngeal vibration to the chest wall is vocal resonance. Auscultation of the laryngeal vibration to the chest wall. Method of elicitation of vocal resonance. How will you elicit the vocal resonance? So there are methods. You will say the patient will repeat 1 1 or the patient will repeat 99 99. 1 1 or 99 or 99 the patient will repeat. This is one method. Another is the patient will speak in a constant tone and voice, the depth and intensity of the voice remaining the same. The voice should be clear. So first is 119999. Then you will ask the patient to speak in a constant tone and voice. Constant tone and voice. Speak in constant tone and voice. Then both sides of the chest are auscultated area by area, comparing with the corresponding site on either side. Auscultation starts from above downwards in front, sides and back of the chest. So both sides of the chest for vocal resonance is auscultated area by area, comparing the corresponding side on other side. Auscultation starts from above downwards in the front, sides and back. It is better to start from the apparently healthy sides. Do not auscultate over the clavicle, sternum and scapula. So do not auscultate over the clavicle, sternum and scapula. So it is, you have to compare one side with the other and you have to start front, side and back. It is better to start for this auscultation from the healthy area. So classification of vocal resonance. Vocal resonance is classified as the qualitative change and quantitative change. Quantitative change and qualitative change. Qualitative change is your egophony. Qualitative change is your egophony. Egophony is the qualitative change. So qualitative change is your egophony. This is a qualitative change in vocal resonance. Qualitative change in vocal resonance with nasal intonation. Qualitative change in vocal resonance with nasal intonation. Nasal intonation may be mimicking the bleating of a goat. It mimics the bleating of a goat. So it is the qualitative change in the nasal intonation that mimics the bleating of a goat. It is classically heard over the consolidation. Egophony is classically heard over the consolidation and sometimes above the level of pleural effusion. It is heard over the consolidation and above the level of pleural effusion. That is your egophony. Though the speech remains intelligible, the removal of the low-pitched elements of the sound explains the nasal pleating quality of the egophony. There is selective transmission of high-pitched components of the sound. So this is the qualitative change in vocal resonance with nasal intonation mimicking the bleating of a goat. It is classically found over the consolidation and above the level of pleural effusion. Though the speech remains intelligible, the removal of the low-pitched elements of the sound explains the nasal quality of egophony. There is selective transmission of high-pitched components of the sound. High-pitched components of the sound are selectively transmitted and there is removal of the low-pitched elements. So there is, we get the nasal intonation change in the qualitative change in the vocal resonance. What is the quantitative change in vocal resonance? Quantitative change in vocal resonance could be diminished. Where does you get diminished vocal resonance? You get in pleural effusion, pneumothorax, hydropneumothorax, thickened pleura, fibrosis, collapse with obstructed bronchus, emphysema. Collapse with obstructive bronchus, emphysema. So in all these conditions, you get the diminished vocal resonance. Where you get the diminished vocal resonance? Pleural effusion, pneumothorax, hydropneumothorax, then thickened pleura, fibrosis, collapse with obstructed bronchus, fibrosis, emphysema. Here all you get the decreased vocal resonance. You won't get this bronchophony, egophony, hydrothorax, pleural effusion. Above the level progression, you will get pneumothorax, hydropneumothorax, thickened pleura, fibrosis. You won't get. So, what are the causes of increased vocal resonance? Increased vocal resonance is known as the tooth conditions are there. We have the bronchophony and we have the whispering pectorology. Bronchophony seems to appear from the stethoscope, earpiece of the stethoscope. Bronchophony seems to appear from the earpiece of the stethoscope. Bronchophony appears from the earpiece of the stethoscope. Whispering pectorology, it seems to be spoken into the auscultatory air, auscultator's ear. The bronchophony appears to come from the earpiece of the stethoscopes, while the whispering pectorology comes from the auscultator directly into the auscultator's ear. Patient whispers, the increased sound is heard clearly and or distinctly syllabi by syllabi. Patient whisper, there is increased sound which is heard clearly and distinctly. Clearly and distinctly. Patient whispers, the sound here which are clear and distinctly heard syllabi by syllabi. And it is called the pectorology. It seems as if the patient is spoken right into the auscultator's ear. Bronchophony and whispering pectorology are classically heard over the consolidation. It is heard over the consolidation. It is also heard in collapse with patent bronchus. It also heard in collapse with patent bronchus over the superficial empty cavity and sometimes above the level of pleural effusion, and in open pneumothorax. What are the conditions in you get the bronchophony and whispering pectorology? Then you will say in consolidation above the level of pleural effusion. These things you know in consolidation and in over the level of pleural, you get the whispering pectorology and bronchophony. Despite this, you will get the collapse with patent bronchus. You will get it over the superficial empty cavity and open pneumothorax. Over the superficial empty cavity and in an open pneumothorax you get this sound. So what is, the examiner can ask another question, what is normal vocal resonance? What is normal vocal resonance? Then you will say the normal vocal resonance, the sound seems to be produced at the chest piece of the stethoscope. The sound seems to be produced at the chest piece of the stethoscope, not at the earpiece. It is produced at the chest piece of the stethoscope. Heard as indistinct rumble. It is heard at indistinct rumble. If it is distinctly syllabi by syllabi, then it is whispering bacteriology. But the heard sound is an indistinct rumble, comes from the chest peak of the stethoscope. Indistinct rumble. Individual syllabi are indistinguishable. Individual syllabi are indistinguishable. Individual syllabi are indistinguishable. So normal vocal resonance is as if coming from the chest piece of the stethoscope. Heard as indistinct rumble. Individual syllabi are indistinguishable. Individual syllabi are indistinguishable. Then another question, what are the complications of pneumonia? So the complication are pneumonia first within the lung. The problem in the lung, it can cause either the delayed resolution is the complication of pneumonia, delayed resolution. It is lung abscess or cavity formation, pleural effusion, empyema thoracis, paraneumonia effusions, organizing pneumonias, pneumothorax, nematoceles, fibrosis of the lung and respiratory failure. So what are the complications? Pulmonary complications are your delayed resolution is also the complication. Delayed resolution, lung abscess, pleural effusion, empyema thoracis, paraneumonia effusion, organizing pneumonias, respiratory failure, pneumothorax, nematoceles. Out of this you have to remember first there is delayed resolution. Delayed resolution is the complication. Lung abscess and pleural effusion and empyema thoracis. Lung abscess, pleural effusion, empyema thoracis, and fibrosis can occur. Paraneumonia effusions is a complication. You can remember this lung pleural effusion and empyema thoracis. I think you can remember. With that effusion, one more effusion, you can add paraneumonia effusions. If they are there, there is delayed resolution. Then you can add on lung abscess. Other things like nematocyst, organizing pneumonia, fibrosis, you can add on. Neurological complication, it can cause meningism, meningitis, mental confusion, cerebral abscess. So this is the neurological complication are your meningism, meningitis, mental confusion, meningitis, mental confusion, meningitis, mental confusion, and cerebral abscess. These are the neurological complication. Then cardiovascular complication of pneumonia, you have the myocarditis, endocarditis, pericarditis. All the three layers are inflamed. Endo, myo, pericarditis, and peripheral circulatory failure. Cardiovascular complication. In the GIT tract, it causes hepatitis and meteorism. Meteorism is distended tense abdomen due to gaseous accumulation. So in the GIT tract, it causes the meteorism, which is the gaseous distension of the abdomen, tense abdomen because of the gaseous accumulation, meteorism, and hepatitis in GIT tract. Then in musculoskeletal system, it can cause septic arthritis. Then other complication, it can cause septicemia, herpes labialis, thrombophlebitis, uremia, ARDS, multi-organ failure, septicemia, herpes labialis, thrombophlebitis, ARDS, multi-organ failure, uremia, multiple thin wall cyst-like lesion is seen in staph. In staph, you will find the cystic thin walled lesion in staph. Now another question the examiner can ask, what is your bronchopneumonia? So you will say it is diffuse, it is widespread, patchy alveolar consolidation. It is diffuse, widespread, patchy alveolar consolidation associated with bronchiolar and bronchial inflammation, affecting both lower lobes. So what is bronchopneumonia? It is diffuse, widespread, patchy alveolar consolidation. So it is diffuse, widespread, patchy alveolar consolidation with not only alveolar but bronchial and bronchiolar inflammation. Alveolar, it is diffuse widespread. It is diffuse widespread patchy alveolar consolidation with it is a diffuse widespread patchy alveolar consolidation with bronchial and bronchiolar inflammation affecting both the lower lobes. The children complication in children, the children are persons are most vulnerable to bronchopneumonia. Bronchopneumonia is the complication of measles, whooping cough. The children and the elderly are the most vulnerable person for this bronchopneumonia. In children, the complication in bronchopneumonia occurs because of the measles and whooping cough. In elderly, it occurs because of influenza and bronchitis. Influenza and bronchitis in children because of the measles and whooping cough. So bronchopneumonia basically seen in the children and the elderly. In children, whooping cough and your measles. In elderly, your influenza and bronchitis. So it is a patchy consolidation in the lower lobes, widespread diffuse with alveolar and bronchiolar inflammation. Then comes the important question: what is your atypical pneumonia? Atypical pneumonia. Atypical in this group of pneumonia which do not behave like lobar pneumonia. There is a group of pneumonia which do not behave like lobar pneumonia, that is typical pneumonia, and do not respond to the penicillin. They don't behave like lobar pneumonia and they don't respond to the typical penicillins. They don't respond to the penicillin. They don't behave like lobar pneumonia. This type of atypical pneumonia is not severe. It is not severe and is caused by Chlamydia psittaci, Legionella pneumonia, Legionella pneumophila, Mycoplasma pneumonia. So Chlamydia psittaci, Legionella pneumophila, Mycoplasma pneumonia, Mycoplasma, Ureaplasma, Legionella, Chlamydia, Coxiella burnetii, which is Q fever. Coxiella burnetii is Q fever. Mycoplasma pneumonia. Predominant symptoms of this atypical pneumonia is the dry cough and constitution symptoms we have discussed, and as such more than respiratory system. Constitutive symptoms are more as compared to your respiratory system. Constitutive symptoms are more than the respiratory system symptoms. So patient will have fever, headache, malaise, myalgia. These symptoms are more common as compared to cough and sputum and shortness of breath. Abnormality in the chest x-ray in spite of the lack of physical signs. There is no physical signs, but there will be abnormality of the chest x-ray. Then how will you investigate a case of pneumonia? This is another question. Investigation of pneumonia. So what you will say? You will say first in the blood. What you will see in the blood? You will do the CBC in TLC, DLC, ESR. In the TLC, you will find the polymorph leukocytosis. Paralysis of leukocytosis indicate lung abscess or empyema formation. It is indicate lung abscess or empyema formation. And abscess of leukocytosis indicates leukopenia and it indicates your atypical pneumonia. If leukocytosis is not there, it indicates atypical pneumonia. Toxic granulation within the neutrophils indicates bacterial pneumonia. ESR tends to be high. HIV testing is done in selective cases. ESR and HIV testing. TLC, DLC करेंगे. Sputum में for identification of organism, both aerobic and anaerobic culture, and detection of sensitivity. For culture of the organism and sensitivity to antibiotics, we will do sputum. Attempt should be made to establish the microbiological diagnosis if possible. Administration of a nebulized hypertonic saline often helps in expectoration. Many a time false positive results come out. Non-pathogenic organism from the oropharynx, many time sputum, many time false positive आ सकते हैं. In our country, sputum should always be examined for gram stain and acid fast bacilli. Should always stand for acid fast by gram stain and Zn stain. And culture and sensitivity of the sputum should be done. This was the sputum examination. Then X-ray, you will do the X-ray, PA view and lateral view. In the X-ray, this is helpful for confirming the diagnosis. You will find the homogeneous opacities with air bronchogram, homogeneous opacity with air is seen involving the segments part of the lobe or lobes of the lung. Rarely reticular patterns in cause in viral and mycoplasma pneumonia. Pleural effusion and empyema may be present. In X-ray, pleural effusion and empyema may be present. Follow-up with X-ray after 7 to 10 days is necessary to see the response to therapy. You do the X-ray, and in the diagnosis and development of complication is there or not. Site of involvement in pneumonia is as follows. So pneumonia site of involvement is as follows. Right lung is involved more. Right lung is involved more because of its continuity with the trachea. Right lung involved more. Apical area is affected more in TB. Apical area is affected more in TB or Klebsiella pneumonia. Apical lung is affected more in TB and Klebsiella pneumonia. Basal segments of the lower lobe is seen in standing or sitting position. Basal segment is seen in standing or sitting position. Basal segments of the lower lobe. And posterior segment of the upper lobe and the superior segment of the lower lobe. Superior segment of the lower lobe and posterior segment of the upper lobe. It is affected more in recombinant position. So if patient is standing or sitting, basal segments of the lower lobes are affected. If patient is recombinant in position, posterior segment of the upper lobe or superior segment of the lower lobes are affected. In apical area is affected, TB, Klebsiella should think of. If right lung is affected, trachea is because in continuity with it. Then comes to the blood culture. This is done in severe pneumonia in hospitalization, especially when the sputum examination is negative. PCR tests are available for a number of pathogens. This is done in severe cases blood culture. Then serology testing you will do for Mycoplasma pneumonia, Coxiella burnetii, and Legionella pneumophila and viral infections. So you will do the serology for Mycoplasma, Coxiella burnetii, Legionella. You will do then viral infection. You will do a 4-fold rise in titer after 7 days suggests a recent infection. So 4-fold rise after 10 days indicates recent infection. Pneumococcal antigen can be detected in pneumococcal pneumonia. Then nose and throat swabs. Nose and throat swabs may be cultured for virus and examined on the electron microscopy. Nose throat swab culture करने हैं for virus. Nose throat swab culture for virus. Then pleural fluid. If there is formation of parapneumonia, the fluid may be aspirated for microbiological examination. Then pulmonary function test you can do, pulse oximetry you can do, ABG you can do, pulmonary function test, pulse oximetry, ABG. In ABG you will find the hypoxia with hypocarbia, that is type 1 respiratory failure. You will get the hypoxia with hypocarbia. You will get type 1 respiratory failure pneumonia. It is done in the management of seriously ill patient in the anticipation of assisted ventilation. CT scan of the thorax if an obstructive tumor is suspected. CT scan if you are suspecting tumor. Bronchoalveolar lavage or tracheal aspiration for microscopic examination and culture. Bronchoalveolar lavage, tracheal aspiration. Bronchoscopy may be done when there is evidence of obstructing. For CT scan for obstructing tumor, even bronchoscopy for obstructive tumor. You are doing bronchoscopy. Even CT scan you are doing now. Bronchoscopy you are doing for obstructive tumor or foreign body. Lung biopsy, transthoracic lung biopsy or CT guided or video assisted thoracoscopy guided lung biopsy. So CT guided lung biopsy, transthoracic guided lung biopsy rarely needed. These biopsies are rarely needed. Sometimes open lung biopsy is done in patients who are immunocompromised. You do the open lung biopsy in HIV, AIDS, pneumocystis jirovecii. Now comes to the management of pneumonia. So general management, you will advise the patient the bed rest, good nutritious diet, high calorie with plenty of fluids. Good nutritious diet, high calorie with plenty of fluid, bed rest, plenty of fluid with bed rest. Then Specific antibiotics usually given after sputum examination. You will give the specific antibiotic after sputum examination. If sputum is obtainable and is unobtainable and unhelpful, start with erythromycin. Start with erythromycin 500 mg, 500 mg QDS orally, or amoxicillin. Amoxicillin 500 mg TDS orally. If you are not able to get the sputum, you will start with erythromycin, amoxicillin. If in hospital acquired pneumonia and pneumonia in immunocompromised host, third generation cephalosporin should be started. Third generation, if you are suspecting hospital acquired pneumonia and pneumonia in immunocompromised, third generation cephalosporin should be started. Third generation cephalosporin should be started. Immunocompromised and hospital acquired pneumonia. Then symptomatic treatment, you will give the symptomatic treatment, oxygen inhalation in high concentration. If there is hypoxemia, you will give the oxygen inhalation. Then cough suppressant with methadone, falcodine extra. In harassing non-productive cough, harassing dry cough, you will give the cough suppressants. Otherwise, expectoration should be encouraged. Hydrocort, you will give. Efcorlin, you will give if there is circulatory failure, which is the complication of pneumonia. You will give the efcorlin. IV fluid for dehydration and hypotension, you will give the IV fluid for dehydration and hypotension. Warmth, you will give warmth. You will counter irritants and analgesics for pleural pain. You will give the analgesic paracetamol or NSAIDs for pleural pain. Opiates may be used with extreme caution in poor respiratory function. Opiates should be carefully in a patient with pneumonia. Injection diazepam you will give if there is delirium you are getting. You will give injection diazepam for delirium. Use cautiously. Assisted ventilation you will give if there is respiratory failure. Postural drainage and chest physiotherapy in case of suppurative pneumonia. You will give the postural drainage and chest physiotherapy in suppurative pneumonias. Thromboprophylaxis with low molecular weight heparin with elastic stockings in the legs prevent the DVT. Low molecular weight heparin with elastic stocking in the leg prevent DVT. Thromboprophylaxis is given if admitted for more than 12 hours. You will give the thromboprophylaxis. Then prevention. Prevention you can do the pneumococcal vaccine for once in lifetime. Pneumococcal vaccine once in lifetime, and is advised for patient more than 65 years, and is advised patient for more than 65 years, where you will give the pneumococcal more than 65 years. Asthmatics, COPD, diabetics, uremia, chronic kidney, chronic liver, alcoholics, immunocompromised, asplenic individuals. Influenza vaccine is recommended to those at high risk of mortality from pneumonia, taken every year. Then conclusion of consolidation is mediastinum, that is trachea, trachea and apex beat. Trachea and apex beat is not shifted in consolidation. Fever may have chill, rigor, cough initially dry and painful, later on productive. Hemoptysis, rusty sputum, frank hemoptysis, gross anorexia, headache, for body ache, pleuritic chest pain, tachypnea, herpes labialis with features of consolidation. Typical pneumonia are common modes of presentation. The hallmark of diagnosis is your absence of mediastinal shift, woody dullness on percussion, and tubular breath sound, bronchophony, whispering pectorality with egophony on the affected side. So absence of mediastinal shift, woody dullness, tubular breath sound, bronchophony, whispering pectorality with egophony on the affected side. So this is a case of consolidation. Thank you.